My name is Madeline, and I am an information specialist and options counselor with Heritage Area Agency on Aging. We're so happy that everyone is able to make it on the call today. And our topic is healthy eating made easy. Just a few things before we get started. Today's presentation will be recorded and posted onto our website for those that cannot be here or want to reference the presentation later. We will not be able to record the Q&A period of the presentation. And please remain muted during the presentation so we can avoid having any distractions. If you have a question, please go ahead and type it in the chat box. We will be working to summarize the questions and pose them to our speaker after she goes through her information. And again, this part will not be recorded. So our speaker for Healthy Eating Made Easy is Nicole Johnson, RN LD from Hy-Vee. Nicole will help us to understand common barriers that get in the way of eating a well-balanced diet. She will identify opportunities for improving a care recipient's diet and overall health by implementing creative strategies, setting smart goals, and developing helpful teaching tools to help patients make sustainable behavior changes. We may not be able to get to everyone's questions or answer what you're looking for today. So if you have additional questions that we're not able to get to, you can go ahead and give Heritage a call. Our phone number is 319-398-5559, and a member of our team will get back to you. So let me introduce you to Nicole. Nicole, RN LD, has been a Hy-Vee dietitian since 2007. She received her Bachelor of Science degree in dietetics from Iowa State University and completed her internship at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Bay Pines, Florida. Nicole believes small behavior changes can add up, and those changes positively influence overall health. Nicole loves helping consumers create realistic goals for positive behavior change and help consumers realize that healthy eating is enjoyable and delicious. One of the highlights of being a Hy-Vee dietitian is being able to work with a variety of people in a variety of age ranges. Nicole loves being a Hy-Vee dietitian because she believes healthy eating begins at the grocery store, and this is the ideal place to make healthy lifestyle changes. In her free time, Nicole enjoys being active and traveling with her two kids and her husband. So we are ready to get started. The floor is now yours, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Malin. I realized my bio was probably longer than it needed to be, but so I appreciate you reading that long thing. I can't remember if it was mentioned there or not, but I've been with Hy-Vee since 2007. And so I've been with Hy-Vee for 17 years as a Hy-Vee dietitian. I've been at Collins Road, so if you used to shop at Collins Road before they closed, you might have seen me there. Otherwise, now my home is at the Edgewood Road Hy-Vee. So that's where you can find me. I know that Madeline gave out information to contact Heritage Area Agency on Aging if we don't get to your question. My last slide also has my contact information. So people can reach out to me directly if we don't get to your question today. All right, so we're going to get started. One of the things and let me see here with my screen. Okay, there we go. So before I, jump into our presentation, I always say that healthy food isn't healthy unless we actually eat the healthy food. So I am one for really encouraging people to eat the food that they love, but also, showing them how healthy food can also be delicious. So that's kind of a little bit about how I approach healthy eating. And I really do encourage people to make those small changes. So hopefully throughout this presentation today, you might grab a few things a few changes that maybe can work for you. But a little bit about our objectives. We're really going to talk about barriers to eating a well-balanced diet. We're going to talk about some of the changes and updates in our dietary guidelines for Americans. And then we're going to talk about improving the overall diet with setting smart goals. And then we're going to talk about hold on, let's see here, how to practice those behavior changes. All right. So if, and I know that right now everyone's kind of on mute, but so maybe these are just things that you can think about in your head. How would you rate your diet in terms of health? 10 out of 10, you love your fruits and vegetables. You're decent overall, but I have room for improvement. 3, I'm a picky eater. My diet lacks much variety. Or 4, I'd rather do my taxes than think about eating healthier. I think a lot of us might be fall. It kind of depends on the day for a lot of us, right? I know myself, I could not rate myself a number one all the time. And so sometimes, we depends on the day, and we're going to talk about those barriers on why we're not all that number one, that A plus student. All right. So I think a big part of what when we're eating healthier is talking about the barriers. Why is eating healthy so difficult? Is it time? Is it budget? Is it knowledge? Is it taste? I think another one that could be up here is energy. I have a lot of customers that tell me that they work all day long, and the last thing that they want to do when they get home is cook a healthy meal. Maybe they have the time, but they just don't have quite the energy. I think a lot of times, meal, maybe we haven't planned our meals out. And so then that's also, I think that they had like a survey out that a high percentage of people at 5 o'clock have no idea what they're going to serve their family for dinner. And so really coming up with, if you're not planning those meals, it's going to be really hard to know what to make. I also think temptation is a huge part of it too. It's tempting just to go through the drive-through instead of going home and cooking dinner. And then we also know that sugar on some level is addictive. And so if you are eating, and we could talk a little bit more about cravings as we're going on, but um, if you are one that we tend to crave what we eat. So if you are eating if you're starting off your day on a sugary note, then that kind of continues on throughout the day. So we'll talk about, really how to overcome a lot of these barriers. But I think we do have to realize that there are a lot of barriers to eating healthy. And it can be a challenge for a lot of individuals. And the other thing that I always say is we do the easy thing. People in general, we're kind of hardwired to do the easy thing. So if you have, convenient food at home, that makes it really easy. And so kind of talking a little bit about that. Okay, so we're going to talk about stress eating a little bit. Um, and I don't know if anyone was aware, but stress spelled backwards is desserts. So that's always kind of a funny thing to like tell people that if we spell it backwards, we get desserts. So one thing that I like to kind of tell people is from a biological standpoint, when we are stressed, there's a lot of hormones that come into play here. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, some of those hormones. But when we are stressed, our body's natural reaction to that is to eat high calorie, high sugary, high carbohydrate foods. Those are foods that are going to give us that quick energy level, those sugary foods. And so it's very normal to crave those foods when we are feeling stressed. But we also know eating those foods isn't really going to help the type of stress that most of us are dealing with. So really instead trying to eat those well-balanced meals, which we'll talk a little bit about what that means, is really important when we're trying not to feel, when we're trying to overcome stress. But it is very normal to be craving a lot of the foods that we typically go to when we're feeling stressed. I don't know many people that are grabbing baby carrots when they're feeling stressed. So sometimes it's just recognizing, yes, I do crave these foods, and it's kind of like my body's way of getting that quick energy. but really I'm going to feel better if I do have a more of a well-balanced meal or snack at this time. Okay, so stress, we know stress is really, and this is something that I always talk to my kids about. So stress and like the reason why we crave the foods that we crave when we're feeling stressed, if you think about our ancestors, the caveman days, their stress was running away from a tiger or whatever kind of natural thing that was their danger. Now, our stress is not something of that immediate danger that we need that quick energy. Instead, now our stress is maybe my work is stressful, maybe taking care of my kids is stressful, maybe taking care of a spouse or another family member is stressful. Maybe I'm worried about money. So our stress is very different now than it ever used to be. If you look back on the biological, our biology of humans, our stress is very different. So our body's way of dealing with stress is still back into those kind of those caveman days that we are gonna those we're gonna crave those high carbohydrate, high sugary foods because we need that quick energy to run away from that bear that's chasing us. So we have to kind of keep that in mind that some of these things that the way that we respond to stress, um, is because of the way that we are hardwired. But in the 21st century, most of us are not running away from bears. And so we know that stress nowadays, and it's the chronic stress. It's not just that short-term stress, but that chronic stress can lead to obesity, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, depression, anxiety, asthma, IBS, infertility, headaches, muscle tension, and even premature aging. So really, a lot of those things you can think of it as that repeated exposure to stress really kind of causes chronic inflammation. And then those things can lead to those things on the screen. All right, here's another little thing about how stress affects the body. And really, I mean, this is kind of what we've already, this is just more of a picture form of it, if that, appeals to you a little bit better. But really talking about how there's lots of different ways that we deal with stress. I know some individuals that when they are stressed, they don't eat. Other people are grabbing those high calorie, high carbohydrate, high sugary foods. So it kind of depends on how you personally deal with it. All right. So when we are creating our plate, we have kind of this is one way to really um to help you with that balance. We want our plate to be 50%. Oh yeah, I'm going to get to that in just a second here. We creating our healthy plate, 50% fruits and vegetables, which should be on the side of the screen. 25%, which would be that serving of lean protein, 25% whole grains, and then water, water, water. But as you see here, they say this is the stressful diet days. Half your plate's anything chocolate, those salty foods, maybe cold pizza, fruits and vegetables down here, very small portion, and then maybe beer and wine. And I know that, again, kind of talking about back in our caveman days, those salty, sugary foods really were a way for us to have quick sources of energy when we needed to be able to run away from that bear or whatever stressful situation we used to come into. So now, and I know myself on stressful situation days, I might be craving some of these foods on this plate, but really we know that we're going to feel better afterwards, um, if we are following more of this balance plate here. Okay, sugar. So when we are talking about sugar, we're actually talking about added sugar, which is one of the things that's actually been added to the food label. Underneath total carbohydrates, then it has sugars, and then it has added sugars. So when we're talking about added sugars, we're not talking about the sugars that are naturally in fruits. We're not talking about the sugars that are naturally in milk and yogurt. We're talking about those added sugars. And we do have guidelines on what we recommend for the amount of added sugars per day. So one way to figure out how many teaspoons of sugar you're typically having in a day, you look on the food label and it'll tell you it in grams. It doesn't list it in teaspoon, but 4 grams of sugar on the food label translates to 1 teaspoon of added sugar. I think that helps people to visualize it because if you think about everyone knows what a teaspoon of sugar looks like, or if you think of it like a sugar cube. A teaspoon of sugar, that's the sugar, like if you're gonna eat cereal and you're adding, sugar from the sugar bowl, or you're having oatmeal and you're adding brown sugar to it, you can kind of visualize what those teaspoons look like. Most Americans consume about 17 teaspoons of added sugar daily. Now, our added sugar is not typically coming from our sugar bowl, right? It's coming um from foods. It's already in the foods. Like I'm thinking, sugary cereals, anything sweet. Um, those and yogurt. There's a wide variety of the amount of added sugar in different yogurts. So when we're looking at sugar, the dietary guidelines for Americans, they say you should limit your added sugar to 12 teaspoons per day. But the American Heart Association says even lower. They recommend 6 teaspoons for women and less than 9 teaspoons for men. And does anyone want to guess how many teaspoons of sugar is in a 20-ounce Mountain Dew? And I wish that I could have people jump in. But anyway, maybe I'll let people put that in the chat if that's okay, Alan, and you can let me know if anyone responded. But so the question is, how many teaspoons of sugar are in a 20-ounce Mountain Dew? So we're not talking about grams, we're talking about teaspoons. But like I said, really, when you're looking at that food label, you look at the amount of grams, and if you divide that by 4, that's going to tell you how many teaspoons. Otherwise, you can keep this idea, kind of this goal in mind. 24 grams for women and 36 grams for men. And then we'll talk about how much is in a 20-ounce Mountain Dew later on.
Yeah, we've got some guesses. We've
Oh,
got
okay.
36, 27, 22. I'm gonna guess 24. I don't know.
You guys are all pretty close. It's actually 19. So I know that compared to some of those guesses, that doesn't, but when you measure out 19 teaspoons of sugar, I can't remember how many cups that is. Like, I'm trying to think of, I know we have 16 tablespoons in a cup. So I think that's a little bit more than a third of a cup of sugar. But when you really visualize that and you look at that 19 teaspoons, it's pretty crazy. And if you look at this, Americans consume, so the average American is only consuming not only, but 17. But if you are a pop drinker, you might be consuming way more than that. So yeah, so our goal is less than 24 for women and less than 36 grams of sugar. The reason why men have a higher recommendation than women is because men tend to need more calories than women. So men should also be eating more fruits and vegetables than women, probably more water than women, and so it's and more calories in general. So that's why we're really looking at as a percentage of calories. So that's kind of why men have a higher amount than women. Okay, so this just talks a little bit about food groups and really what the average American is consuming right now. This is for ages 19 through 30. So these are those young adults. And so when we're looking at men and we're looking at or male and female for vegetables. The purple is what average intakes are. And then recommended is in this light blue. And you'll see that there's a little bit of a variation on what's recommended. It kind of is based on total calories that are recommended for that individual. And then also, so if you have a female that is maybe smaller and needs 1,200 calories, it's going to be less, their recommended amount for everything is going to be a little bit lower. And if they need, versus a female that maybe is really active and needs 2,000 calories, they're going to need more. So that's why we have a variation in the recommendation. But anyway, yeah, so you'll kind of see that we are below everything for fruits, vegetables, grains. So I think that there's a lot of misconception on carbohydrates. When we think about grains, those are going to be those whole grains that really have a lot of good nutrients. Dairy is below, and then protein foods. So for men, the average intake for that age level is actually higher than what we recommend. For females, it is lower. All right, so this is that mid-range 31 to 59. And so then here we've got, again, maybe a little bit better on the fruits and vegetables. Both of them are on that low range of recommendation for grains. Again, men are above it for protein. It looks like the females are right on that. All right, so now we're looking at ages 60 years of age and older. And I would say pretty similar to the last slide in terms of, really. But yeah, really when I talk to people, a lot of it is how can we get more vegetables in our diet? How can we get more fruits? And how can we get more dairy? Because usually those are what people are lacking in the American diet. So those are a little bit about just some dietary guidelines, comparing our daily intakes to some recommended ranges. All right. So, four nutrients that Americans typically do not get enough of in our diet is going to be fiber, calcium, vitamin D, and potassium. So, potassium and vitamin D are something that was added to the food label not too long ago. When they added that added sugar to the food label, they also added potassium and vitamin D. So you can actually find that information on the food label when you're looking. The average American should get anywhere from 25 to 35 grams of fiber. Anyone want to guess? And Madeline, you can maybe help me out here. Anyone want to guess on what the average American of fiber, or how much the average American is getting in fiber now? Again, that recommendation is between 25 to 35. But yeah, so I'll give those a couple minutes to see if we have any responses, if they want to guess that. Any guesses or no?
Yeah, 12, 10, 15.
Whoever said 12, you are the winner. Most Americans get about 12 grams of fiber. So when we think about where do we get fiber, we get it from fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. So if you think about the previous slide, those are the food groups we're lacking in, right? I mean, we're lacking in, we'll get to the dairy in a little bit, but so really with the fiber, getting that from fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. The reason why we care about fiber is that fiber keeps us regular. I can't tell you how many people I see that have GI issues. Not all of them are related to not enough fiber, but we do know that fiber helps prevent colon cancer. It helps prevent diverticulosis. And so really trying to boost the fiber is important. 1 cup of raspberries has 7 grams of fiber. That's the highest fiber fruit are raspberries. So not all fruits have that much fiber in one serving. But if you're really picking fruits and vegetables and whole grains, you're probably going to get enough fiber. Noodles, for instance, white noodles have about, maybe 1 gram of fiber. Whole grain noodles, I think for a cup have like about 5 grams of fiber. So really trying to, a cup of oatmeal has about 5 grams of fiber. So by choosing those whole grains, and those might be some of the foods that you love, if you love pasta, just switching that to the whole grain variety, that can still be a good way to get a lot of that good nutrition in. So, um, yeah, so that's on. Oh, the other thing that fiber does do is it does help lower cholesterol. So if you have high cholesterol, that's one thing that I always talk to my customers about is trying to get more fiber in their diet to help get rid of that excess cholesterol. Other nutrients, potassium. So potassium is in a lot of fruits and vegetables. So again, if you're eating your fruits and vegetables, you're probably getting potassium. Dairy. So we mentioned that a lot of people aren't getting enough dairy. We saw in the previous slides. Well, guess what? We get calcium, vitamin D, and potassium from dairy. So again, I think there's a lot of misconceptions on dairy and if it's really good for us. Um, but I can tell you in terms of getting those nutrients, a lot of, we recommend about 3 servings of dairy a day. Again, to help with the calcium, vitamin D, and also to help with the potassium. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about sleep. So when we're talking about sleep, it really is important. And I always think about this too. I remember many, many years ago, I was on maternity leave with my daughter. And I remember waking up one day, like she was not a good sleeper. But I remember comparing the nights when she slept relatively well and I got a decent amount of sleep, and the nights that I barely got any sleep at all. The next day, my cravings were completely different. When she slept well, I wanted what we would consider healthy foods. When she did not sleep well, all I was craving was lots of sugar. And so so that is a very real thing that when we don't get a lot of sleep, our cravings do, our body makes up for it in weird ways. This just talks a little bit about leading causes of preventable disease in terms of or deaths in terms of heart disease, cancer. They say automobile accidents are actually some of that. There's a percentage that's caused by drowsy or sleepy drivers. And then even like if they do have sleep apnea, they're twice as likely to have a stroke if it's untreated. So yeah, so there's a lot of important things with sleep disorders just to think about. But I also like to just remind people that if you are not sleeping well, it is hard to eat healthy. It really does make a big difference. Um, so let me move on here. So I feel like that there's a lot of um, how are we doing? Okay, we're doing decent on time. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the emotional center and identifying your why. So I think a lot of times as a dietitian, even, or like when I'm meeting with people and they're like, tell me how I can improve my diet. Tell me what I need, what I need to eat. And I really think if we start off with the why, it really can help a lot. I think motivation is a huge part of eating healthier. Um, and so you have to think about, okay, why do I really want to start eating healthier? What's my why? My mother-in-law, her why for getting a knee replacement probably 10 years ago, but the reason why she knew that she needed a knee replacement, but she didn't really want to go through with the surgery. And she was hanging out with my kids and she couldn't keep up with them any longer. And so that was her why. And so she started swimming. She got the knee replacement done. She's made lots of healthy changes, and it has made her incredibly healthier than she was than probably about 10 years ago. And so for her, why was the grandkids. So for a lot of people, finding out your why can really can help keep you motivated. Um, with the why, and like we said, with the motivating why, the how becomes a lot easier. And so even asking yourself those open-ended questions, what's going to keep me motivated? How am I going to keep doing whatever? If you start making those changes, how am I going to stay motivated? That motivation is going to be a little bit different for each individual person. And so trying to figure out what's motivating for you, can really be helpful. Okay. So this is where we're talking a little bit about how, turn goals into lifelong habits. Um, when we talk about showing up can be a lot of different things. Maybe showing up to your doctor's appointments, showing up to your to the to the kitchen and making dinner, showing up at the gym. It can be a lot of different things, but sometimes just showing up, like I think sometimes if we make one positive change, that can keep us that little bit of motivation can keep us, or that one little change can help us stay motivated. But we really want you to, like, when you're talking about setting goals, we really want them to be something that you're connected to positively, and something that you feel that you can accomplish. I think a lot of times people set goals that are too difficult, and they kind of do the all or nothing approach. I'm going to start eating healthier. So that means I'm never going to have another cookie, or I'm going to give up pop. I'm never going to have another pop. And that can be very difficult to do and really not sustainable. We always say, if you're making a change that you can't continue to make for the rest of your life, maybe don't try to make that change. Meaning that if you can't give up cookies for the rest of your life, which I know I can't, instead talk about, okay, how can I incorporate this into a healthy diet, without trying to be perfect. We always say don't aim for perfection, instead aim for progress over perfection. All right, so this is a picture of me, if you're wondering, and I think that picture was taken in maybe 2010. So if I look very different, that's why. um, okay, so goal setting. I think the shift, hopefully, can be from what foods you shouldn't have, and what foods you can't have, and how we can add, instead of taking foods off our plate, how can we add more nutrition to our plate? We're talking about fruits, vegetables, dairy, whole grains, all those things. Really talking about how we can, making sure that that we're really, instead of focusing on the foods we can't eat, instead we focus on the foods that we want to add to our diet. I know I make this homemade pizza, and recently I had a salad and a vegetable. And I will tell you, I ate way less pizza that night than I normally do. And I was actually satisfied with a lower amount. I was like, wow, it really does help to eat those vegetables even first. Um, and eating more, more than we typically eat, can really help us in terms of, so if you naturally are adding foods to your plate that have that nutrition, you're going to naturally be taking out some of those foods that maybe aren't quite as healthy. But we really do want to talk about adding, not restricting. Um, and I think when people use the word should, it becomes like, I should eat my vegetables. It becomes this negative connotation, and it isn't always super positive. But if I want, or I'm looking forward to eating these vegetables, it can really help. And so a lot of times what I do with people, if eating vegetables is a goal for theirs, I literally make a list of vegetables that they enjoy. I give them recipes to cook those vegetables in a more delicious way. I take them to the frozen aisle, and we look at frozen vegetables that are super easy. So sometimes that's part of really helping to set you up for success, is finding out, first of all, changing your mindset a little bit, but second, coming up with those creative solutions. Oh, I think I have to, oh, wait, oh, so SMART goals. Um, So maybe your long-term goal, and sorry, this is outdated because it says September 2023. My goal is to lose, if your goal was to lose 20 pounds by September 2023, that's probably not going to happen at this point, but maybe it's September 2025. Um, Maybe that's your long-term goal, but your SMART goal would be maybe it's going to be to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables daily, which is typically the minimum amount of fruits and vegetables the average person needs in a day is about 5. We always talk about exercise and how walking works for a lot of individuals. Maybe that's going to be 30 minutes, log your food daily, drink my 32-ounce water bottle, and then eat breakfast every day. Those are just examples of some SMART goals. They are not appropriate for everyone. I always tell a lot of people if they are eating 1 fruit and vegetable a day, we do not jump up to a goal of 5 because that would be very overwhelming. And a lot of times that it's hard to meet that goal if they're currently only eating 1. So maybe their goal is going to be to eat 2. So I'm just saying that those are just some examples, but they are not always appropriate for every individual. Okay, so I know that those slides when we talked about the average American and what food groups they were lacking in, the protein food group came up as one that most people get enough of in a day, or at least men were getting enough of. Maybe women weren't quite getting enough protein. The deal with protein is that even the people who are getting enough protein are eating it mostly at their evening dinner meal. And really, it's very beneficial if we can spread our protein out a little bit more. So if you're thinking about how much protein do I need to get in a day, I always talk to people about how much protein they should get per meal. Most people do not get hardly any, myself included sometimes, most people do not get enough protein at breakfast. So this is really where we want to up our protein for breakfast anywhere from 20 to 30 grams of protein. To give you an idea of what that looks like, an egg has 7 grams of protein. A glass of milk has, I think, like 6 grams of protein. I'm trying to think here now. Some Greek yogurts have 12 grams of protein. So it kind of, peanut butter probably has 5 to 6 grams of protein if you're doing a couple tablespoons. So typically, by adding in different protein, you might need a couple different sources of protein for breakfast to get you up to that 20 grams. So I always talk to individuals about, okay, what do you like? How can we add more protein to your breakfast? It isn't always necessarily we need to remove what you're typically eating, but maybe adding a little bit more to that breakfast. The reason, breakfast is really important. It's hard. I think there's a lot of misconceptions with intermittent fasting. For most individuals, fasting throughout the night, that 8 to 12 hours without food is enough of a fast where it's hard to build muscles after if you aren't eating any protein for breakfast. So if you're one of those people that has coffee and maybe a donut or like a pastry roll, you're probably not getting enough protein in the morning. And that's where I would encourage you to kind of think about, maybe I can still have that dinner roll or that breakfast, pastry, but maybe less of it, and then adding more protein to that breakfast. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. It's just, okay, how can I add just even a little bit of protein to my breakfast? Stretching food dollars is something that I do talk to a lot of people about because the price of food is it's high. And so really, how can those cost-effective proteins, meat is very expensive these days. And so sometimes, adding some of these plant proteins, eggs isn't necessarily a plant protein, but adding some of those non-meat options as protein sources can really help to kind of stretch your food dollars. And a little bit about if you can't tell the difference, why pay the difference? These are just some Hy-Vee brand items, but really anything in general, at any, store, there's generic options that a lot of times are very similar to your regular name brand products. One of my favorite sections of the grocery store is the frozen food section, because that's where we can get nutrition and convenience in one, and a lot of foods there. Um, Frozen fruits and vegetables are just as good for you as frozen fruits and vegetables are just as good for you as fresh fruits and vegetables. So that's something that I really like people to kind of think about and take advantage of. Um, and I also think some of these, if you're trying to get more protein in the morning, these power waffles up here, Kodiak cakes, they also have frozen pancakes. These are toaster waffles. So they come frozen and you just pop them in the toaster. And they also have pancakes as well. Those have about 12 grams of protein per serving. So that, some peanut butter, you're probably pretty close to your 20 grams. Or that and a glass of milk, you're pretty close to those 20 grams. So um, that can definitely be something to kind of consider if you like waffles and pancakes and you know you're not getting enough protein. Um, when we talk about hydration, so I think a lot of that with the hydration really, we talked about Mountain Dew and pop in general having a lot of sugar. But sometimes when we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty. And so making sure that you're well hydrated will help with that. If you're trying to look for healthier beverages, water obviously is going to be the best thing that you can drink. Water and milk. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, I like a lot of those sparkling waters. There's LaCroix these days. There's Spindrift. There's, I think, like the Bubbler. There's so many different brands I can't keep up with. Um, but those are going to be a good way to get some hydration in without getting any added sugar. Um, Zevia is kind of like a diet pop, but it's instead of having Splenda in it, it's got stevia. So it's just another option. And then the True Lemon, again, is something that you can add to water, tea, um, to add that lemon flavor without adding any sugar. Something else that I tell people to do is you can add um, fruit and herbs to water. Even doing frozen berries sometimes is enough to add some flavor to your water. So that's a good, if you're just kind of looking, if you don't really like adding lemon, because lemon juice is an easy thing to add to your fruit. If you're not big into that, adding berries. The other thing that's actually really good is mint. So you can get fresh mint and add that into water. That's just something, that's what infused water means. It's just that it has fruit and herbs in it, just kind of a fancy term. But adding those things can really help in terms of keeping you hydrated. All right. So I can't tell you how often I hear this term or this sentence. I know what to do, but I need help doing it. Or I know what to do. I just need to, I need that extra help. And I think that's kind of a big, I think a lot of us need that. You know what I mean? Like that support system is huge. If your family, if you're trying to eat healthy and you're sitting down to eat a healthy meal and your family's eating a bunch of junk food in front of you, well, that's not going to work. You really have to get the whole family involved, and to really make it a family habit, or trying to get your spouse involved. And I know sometimes that can be difficult, but so if you're not getting a support system from the people you live with, reaching out and getting that support system can help. There's lots of different journals, apps, things like that that can help. Even my smartwatch tells me when I should get up, get more exercise, and so forth. All right, so this is just a little bit about mindful eating, that we typically enjoy our meal more when we're actually doing these things. We're in a good mood, we're sitting at a real table, um, maybe eating with music on, not multitasking and not hurrying. Healthy is our dietitian portal. So it's something that you can download if you want to have that access to us. And then also there are some services on there. Key takeaways from this. I love that this fail is first attempt in learning, not necessarily that you're actually failing, but more just that you're learning. But some things that you can do is identify barriers, obstacles to healthy eating. Positive emotions can actually help with behavior change. To see big changes, start off with small, specific actions. And Hy-Vee dietitians are here to help you. So as I mentioned, here's my contact information. So I am based out of Edgewood Road, Hy-Vee. So you can always, yeah, 3760. Okay, sorry. At first there, I was like, I feel like, so I'm always here. So you can always call me at the store to try to reach me. Email is also a really good way to get a hold of me. And then my voicemail goes right to my email. So if you ever have if you ever need to get a hold of me, you can always leave me a voicemail and then I will return your phone call.